Pokemon fans, Tamashi here. It seems like lately everyone's butting heads over what they think the coolest, cutest, or just most popular Pokemon is. And you have to admit, there are a few whose popularity just doesn't add up compared to what they're actually capable of in-game, or just compared to other Pokemon. So today we'll be counting down the top 10 most overrated Pokemon in history. Before we begin though, what qualifies as overrated? Well, in this case, it's just Pokemon undeserving of their popular, or even wildly unpopular status given the reasons people like or dislike them. For example, a Pokemon that's perceived to be strong based on how it looks, and people like it for that reason, but in reality it underperforms in battle. Or in the case of number 10, a Pokemon that is vilified for a particular reason, when there are plenty of other Pokemon more deserving of this criticism. You probably guessed it based on that description. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the most hated Pokemon in recent history, Trubbish. Why people dislike Trubbish is on the surface very easy to understand. With so many Pokemon to choose from, why would anyone choose to train a garbage Pokemon? But there's a bit more at play here than you might expect, namely a concept called sympomorphic anthrohumanization. This means to make something look more like a human, so the audience will project human emotions onto it. The less human something looks, the harder it is for us to care about it, and the easier it is for us to vilify it. Lately there's been a bit of an outcry against Pokemon based on inanimate objects in general, not just Trubbish, which is odd when you consider inanimate object-based designs have been around since the beginning, and there aren't really any creative rules about what Pokemon designs can or cannot be based around. That's where this concept comes into play. Inanimate object Pokemon bother people not because of their preconceived notions about what Pokemon should or shouldn't be, but because they have difficulty connecting to them and projecting human emotions onto them. Trubbish is far from the least human looking or even grossest Pokemon design there is though. The Generation 1 Pokemon, Grimer and Muk, are literally based off of sludge, or decomposing feces, which is absolutely the grossest possible concept for a Pokemon to ever exist. So why don't we see these older Pokemon criticized the same way? Well, they're protected by a layer of nostalgia. The way our memories work is that we tend not to remember the bad parts of our past as well as the good things. Because of this, the past will always be a happier, simpler time in our memories, and this builds a sentimental attachment to things that remind us of our past. While we tend to remember how awesome Charizard, Mewtwo, Blastoise, Gengar, and Scyther were, we don't remember so much how lame we thought Grimer, Voltorb, or Magnemite were. So when people throw up their hands at the sight of Trubbish and say, wow, Game Freak must really be out of ideas, they simply don't remember that the designs before were objectively the same thing, because their brains didn't bother saving that info labeled as lame years ago. Additionally, being from the same time as those other awesome Pokemon we remember makes people more willing to defend something that reminds them of what their brain considers the good old days, even if the Pokemon designs objectively weren't really any better or different back then than they are now. While it's fine to dislike Trubbish, it's not quite deserving of the flack it gets while other Pokemon designs get a free pass just for being older. Number 9. Gardevoir. Gardevoir has been a popular Pokemon for many reasons, but somehow it ended up as the postermon for the Pokephilia community. For the uninitiated, there exists a small subgroup of Pokemon fans who don't just want to train and battle Pokemon, they want to date them too. Say what you want about these people, but it won't change the fact that they're out there. While most any humanoid or even non-humanoid Pokemon can qualify as what they call a waifu, none seems more popular than the Generation 3 Pokemon Gardevoir. Mostly, depictions of Gardevoir in this community tend to portray it as a very feminine Pokemon, giving it breasts and feminine facial features. However, let's take a look at Gardevoir as an actual Pokemon, shall we? Not only can Gardevoir be either male or female, but in Japanese its name is the decidedly masculine Sir Knight. Its design isn't meant to resemble a feminine form wearing a dress, but instead a masculine magical knight. Its chest is completely flat, with no protrusions other than the red triangle that pierces its body. So sorry Gardevoir lovers everywhere, but your waifu is kind of a dude. Number 8. Whitney's Miltank. There were always some gym leaders that we had trouble with as kids, but none seems to be more renowned for difficulty than Whitney and her Miltank. With a tracked and rollout, she left many a trainer unable to even defend themselves as they were flattened under her massive udder. But was she really that hard? The game actually threw tons of help at you if you chose to accept it, from offering you many opportunities to catch rock-type Pokemon early in the game for resistance to physical attacks, and even giving you the opportunity to trade a Drowsy for a Machop in Goldenrod department store, to give you a type advantage. Additionally, Totodile learns Rage very early on in the game, which can be an effective way to take out Miltank if you let it build its Rage first while battling her Clefairy. Actually, her Clefairy was much more of a threat. With Metronome in its arsenal, it could end up using Spore, Confuse Ray, Thunder Wave, Swords Dance, Double Team, Leech Seed, Sacred Fire, or even Self-Destruct and Explosion. Now that is a pink Pokemon you don't want to mess with. Number 7. Magikarp. Much like Trubbish, this Pokemon has more infamy than actual fame. But is it really justified?
Though the Pokédex is quick to point out its uselessness and weakness, there are many Pokémon with lower base stat totals and worse move pools, without even impressive evolution to make up for it. For example, Sunkern has the lowest base stats in the entire game, at 180 compared to Magikarp's 200, and once evolved, Sunflora's cripplingly low speed and frailty makes it useless in battle, outclassed by most every other special attacking grass type out there. And while Magikarp might only have Splash and Flail to defend itself with until it evolves, that's still better than Unknown, which is only able to learn Hidden Power, and it doesn't even get any evolution. Gyarados has been one of the biggest powerhouses in the game since Red and Blue, and has only become a bigger contender in Black and White with its Dreamworld ability Moxie. Evolving at the very reasonably low level of 20, there are a million reasons to put the effort into raising a Magikarp, right? Don't be fooled by that frail facade. This fish has some real potential. Number 6. Missing No. In Red and Blue, Missing No is by far the easiest to come across Glitchmon in Pokemon history, and as a result, it's the most well-known and loved. As our original childhood nightmare fodder, Missing No has become the subject of many a rumor and creepypasta. But with so much information available about Missing No online these days, it's hard to believe anyone still finds it mysterious. Back before the internet was so widely accessible, it made sense that Missing No captured so many imaginations. It was the weirdest, most unexplainable thing any of us had ever come across in our favorite game after all. But these days, detailed technical information and analysis of Missing No is widely available. We know why it's there, why we encounter it when we surf along Cinnabar's coast, we know why it duplicates our items, and why it learns Water Gun twice. There's very little about it that's a mystery anymore, making it little more than a boring L-shaped block. I say it's time we found a new Pokemon glitch to build our urban legends around, and I nominate my personal favorite, the ZZAZZ Trainer, who turns all of your Pokemon into level 153 disobedient and exploding Bulbasaurs. Who's with me? Number 5. Mew. Mew has long had the reputation of being the rarest Pokemon in existence. It's been given the Phantom and Mirage Pokemon monikers, and it has inspired millions of rumors about how to go about obtaining this creature. It's amazing that this Pokemon was the one to jog so many kids' imaginations, and cause them to come up with so many strange theories about how to catch it. And yet it's actually the easiest to obtain Legendary in any Pokemon game, thanks to a very well-known glitch. In Red and Blue, there were not 1, not 2, but 3 trainers in Kanto that can cause Mew to appear when performing the aptly named Mew glitch. And on top of that, Pokemon duplication glitches were simple too. It was not uncommon to find kids with entire PC boxes full of Mews. Not only that, but Game Freak has distributed over 20 different Mews in various countries, from 2005 to 2010, making it one of the most highly distributed legendary Pokemon ever. If you own Red, Blue, or Yellow and you've never had a Mew, odds are you're just not looking very hard for one. Don't get me wrong, liking Mew for other reasons is not unjustified. But if you think Mew is the most elusive Pokemon out there, you better think again. Number 4. Pichu. The Pikachu family is of course the most recognizable line in the franchise. Being the series mascot, the bright yellow electric rodent is completely inescapable. While Pikachu has earned plenty of anti-fans from sheer overexposure alone, Pikachu and its evolution Raichu have plenty of redeeming qualities to make their presence tolerable. Pikachu and Raichu are both fun to battle with because they hit fast and hard. And additionally, Pikachu's privilege as the series mascot has netted a lot of fun gimmicks, like the Light Ball and Volt Tackle. But the baby of the Pika family, Pichu, has no saving grace. In both the anime and Super Smash Bros. Melee, every time Pichu tries to use an electric attack, it ends up hurting itself. It adds nothing of value to Pikachu or Raichu just by existing, and it's not even significantly cuter than Pikachu. Pichu has the lowest base stat total of any electric-type Pokemon, as well as the lowest HP, defense, and special attack base stats. Even the Pokédex is quick to point out how derpy Pichu is, noting time and time again that it is unskilled with electricity. There's really no reason for this thing to exist, and it seems like the franchise itself is trying to bury it, as it did not return for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and it is featured on less and less merchandise as time goes on. When even the series itself is trying to make us forget this thing exists, it's a wonder it has any fans at all. Number 3. Most evolutions. Something about Eevee and its many evolutions has made it one of the most popular Pokemon of all time. It all started in Generation 1, when it was one of the cutest Pokemon at the time that wasn't Pink or Pikachu, making it accessible to both boys and girls of all ages. It had 3 evolutions back then, which seems like a small sum now, but even at the time it was novel. As it gained more and more evolutions as the series went on, its gimmick became stronger and stronger, and for some reason people really latched onto it. But I personally have never really understood why it continues to be so popular. Sure, it's cute, but at this point there are many cuter Pokemon out there, like Skitty or Oshawott or Joltik or Victini, and the majority of them aren't even particularly exceptional in battle. Flareon, aside from its obvious weakness to the ever-present Stealth Rock, was given 130 base attack and nothing to do with it. It learns exactly 2 physical fire-type moves, Fire Fang and Flame Charge, neither of which have high enough base power to be useful in late game or competitive. Not with other better physical fire attackers with better movesets to compete with anyway. It's also quite slow, and without the bulk to defend itself with, that lack of speed often means it won't even get a chance to attack before it gets one hit KO'd. Similarly, Leafeon's biggest problem is that there's just so many better grass types to choose from, both offensively and defensively. It also lacks the variety of status-afflicting moves that most grass types come equipped with, having only Grass Whistle and Toxic to choose from. If you haven't noticed, a reoccurring trend here is that there's just always a better option to go with than any of these evolutions. Very few of them can be considered the best at what they do, but they just keep adding more and more without fixing any of these issues. You'd think people would have gotten sick of being force-fed the same gimmick for 15 years, but apparently the more evolutions that are added, the crazier people get about these boring fuzzballs. They're all basically the same Pokemon copy-pasted over and over. They have the same base stat totals, they all have basically the same look, just with a new coat of paint and some elemental features. I have to wonder, at what point will people say enough is enough? When there are 19 evolutions out there? At least fix poor Flareon before you add another Game Freak, jeez. Number 2, most starters. At the beginning of every game, you're given a Pokemon, and that Pokemon is usually with you the longest out of any of the other Pokemon you catch for your journey. So it's only natural people get more attached to starter Pokemon than others. Unfortunately, this attachment comes with the added side effect of undeserved praise. It's not uncommon for starter Pokemon to end up being the most powerful Pokemon in most people's parties. They have a very fast experience growth rate, and as a result, end up easily overleveled when compared to most party members and enemy trainers' Pokemon. But let's be honest here, just because your Typhlosion can easily flatten Picnic or Best level 10 Hoppip, that doesn't mean it's actually a particularly strong Pokemon. On the contrary, the vast majority of all starter Pokemon out there are outclassed when it comes to battling. Much like the evolutions, the bigger problem with most of these starters in battle is just that there's always a Pokemon that can fill their role better than they can. They all tend to have mediocre stats and move pools that make it hard for them to even compete. There are a few exceptions to this rule, like the overpowered Blaziken, and other strong Pokemon like Venusaur and Infernape, but for the most part, the rest of them are just decent at best or completely useless at worst. Sometimes I wonder, if these Pokemon weren't forced on us from the start of the game, if some of them would even get a second glance. I have to admit, if I came across a Turtwig in the wild, I probably wouldn't even consider adding it to my team. Don't get me wrong, it's not a crime to like your starter Pokemon. Just don't be fooled into thinking they're super powerful just because they can sweep most NPCs in the game. If they're designed so little kids can beat them with no trouble, then they're probably not a good measure of strength. And the number 1 most overrated Pokemon is Charizard. Yes, Charizard gets its own category outside the other starter Pokemon. It's that overrated. The factors leading into Charizard's overpopularity are a mix of a lot of the previous reasons we looked at for other Pokemon on this list. First, there's sentimental attachment, both for being something that reminds us of our childhood and for being a starter Pokemon. For many of us, our very first Pokemon. There's also the mascot and overexposure factor, from it being the Pokemon on the cover of Red and Fire Red version. I'll admit, as a little kid I thought I had to choose Charmander as a starter at first, because that was the Pokemon on the cover. And I'm willing to bet a lot of other kids chose it and subsequently became attached to it for similar reasons. However, that's not the only reason it's popular. Even if Charizard had not been a starter Pokemon in Red and Blue and was a wild Pokemon, I'm willing to bet it would still be the most overrated Pokemon to this day. Why? Because of its design. It was simple enough, due to the limited graphical capabilities of the Game Boy, that it was essentially a blank slate for us to project desirable qualities onto. It was enough information to get started: the classic fire-breathing dragon. Sharp teeth, claws, wings, a long powerful tail with flames coming out of it, but everything else was left up to our imaginations. We thought of Charizard as a badass because we could project things that we thought were cool onto it, making it the ultimate childhood empowerment fantasy. This cool creature was ours to control, and it was everything we thought was cool. For evidence of Charizard's overwhelming popularity based only on its design, one need not look any further than the base set Charizard card. It was never actually that rare a card. Really, aside from pre-releases and misprints, there aren't any actually rare base set cards, not even first edition or shadowless cards. There were so few cards in the base set, and so many kids buying so many packs of cards, that even the ones with the star rarity indicator were about as rare as Pocket Lint. It was also not even particularly useful in the trading card game itself, because there are many other cards with similar damage outputs and HP ranges that required fewer energy cards to use. But regardless of its actual rarity or usefulness, it was a shiny card with a cool picture of a cool looking Pokemon on it. And for those reasons alone, we assigned it more value than any other card from our childhoods. The value we placed in just a picture of a Charizard printed on cardstock was so huge apparently people are now willing to drop stupid amounts of money for something that isn't even actually rare or useful. That is the power of Charizard's design. But when you look at what Charizard is actually capable of, it doesn't really live up to the hype. First of all, Charizard is a mere 5 feet 7 inches tall according to the Pokédex, which is barely taller than I am, and not anywhere near as tall as most grown men. In fact, he's barely bigger than Ash, a 10-year-old. This sort of breaks our design personality correlation. Our brains tell us that big things are strong and powerful, but if Charizard isn't as big as we thought it was, it starts to ruin the power fantasy as well. Not only does its small stature mitigate the effect of its design, but it also fails to deliver any real power when we use it in battle. Especially recently with the introduction of Stealth Rock, Charizard is completely useless, because being a fire flying type, it has a ×4 weakness to rock attacks, and weaknesses to some of the most common attacking types out there. If you ever want to use Charizard in an actual competitive match, you're out of luck, because by the time you even get it out onto the field, it will already have sustained serious damage, possibly even enough to immediately knock it out. Its base stats were never particularly exceptional to begin with either, far from the power of Mewtwo, or even its Firestarter colleague Blaziken. Like many fire types, its defenses are mediocre at best, making it a bit flimsy and unable to take a punch. Even without the Stealth Rock weakness, it's outclassed by many other fire types. Volcarona also has a ×4 weakness to Stealth Rock, and it still manages to be incredibly useful. What's your excuse, Charizard? Stop sucking so hard. It's not hard to see why so many people like Charizard, but when it comes down to it, Charizard just can't live up to the powerful persona we built for it when we were kids. It's not a big, badass dragon, but instead a mid-sized flying lizard that falls over in defeat at the mere sight of Stealth Rock. Our imaginations were what gave Charizard its power. And now that we're realizing that, it's clear that Charizard is by far the most overrated Pokemon in history.
And that wraps up our countdown of the top 10 most overrated Pokemon. If you can think of an overrated Pokemon that didn't make this list, feel free to leave me a comment and let me know what it is. Thanks for watching and stick around for more Pokemon videos. See ya!